the term, I mean, obviously in Cosmos, we have this app chain philosophy, right? So that every product, every application has its own blockchain. In fact, a couple of months ago, I hosted a debate between Jack Sempolin, who is one of the core developers in Cosmos, and Kyle Samani, who is one of the founders at Multicoin and obviously big in Solana. So we held this app chains versus Solana versus kind of like roll-up debate. And in fact, I think Kyle was also very, I mean, I think like in generally more of like a skeptic for app chains for everything, but he sees certain use cases, and he also mentioned you guys, and I think he's also invested in you guys and a partner of yours. So, but then you guys are expanding that, and you say we're not just an app chain, we're a sector-specific chain. So maybe you can explain that, and also how you view the app chain theory in Cosmos play out.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at the distribution of layer ones out there right now, they basically fall under two extremes. On one hand, you have general purpose chains like Ethereum and Solana. And on the other hand, you have application specific ones like Osmosis and DYDX v4. So both of these sides have their own benefits and both of them have their own cons. And rather than taking an approach that is on either one of these extremes, we've decided to go right in the middle. So not quite general purpose, not quite application specific, but rather sector specific. So what are the benefits of both sides, right? With the app chain approach, you get customizability and you're able to build the best possible infrastructure for the type of problem that you're able to solve. Like if you're able to build the entire chain around one specific thing, you're able to, by definition, get much better infrastructure than you would if you're building a general purpose chain. If you're using the general purpose approach, the biggest benefit, as Kyle Samani was mentioning, is the social coordination piece of it, right? And we think that's one of the biggest reasons why it's hard to get an app chain off the ground. Because when you're building something where there's an entire community of people that are all part of the same team and they're all helping that ecosystem succeed, it makes it much easier for that ecosystem to become a much bigger ecosystem and have the network effects that it takes to make a top 10 or top 20 chain. And that's why if you look at like the list of top chains out there, they're essentially all general purpose chains because you're able to get that community built. That's why we think that the approach that we're taking right now, where we've created this specialized infrastructure and we're not actually creating any application on top of it, is the approach that is going to be giving us the best of both worlds. Because we do get the customizability of an app-specific chain, but we're also getting the ability to have credible neutrality and to have the social coordination that comes with being a general purpose chain. And what I mean by credible neutrality is if an exchange is considering building on, say, then they don't have to compete with the underlying layer one at all. Like we're just building layer one, we're not building any applications on top. But let's say that there's an app chain that wants to support an ecosystem getting built on it. Then that exchange would most likely need to compete with whatever that app on that ecosystem is, right? So if you have a very popular DEX in the Cosmos ecosystem and they want to support other DEXs building on top, then their DEX is going to be competing with the ecosystem that they're trying to build out. So there's no real credible neutrality over there. So that's why I think that the best ecosystem is going to get formed with this sector-specific approach.
So if I understand this correctly, you're basically building an L1 that is optimized for trading, for like exchanges, right? And
exactly.
Then there's different versions of exchanges, and like all these applications can build on top of that. So you like, how does that work? Like, do they build smart contracts on like via smart contracts on top, or what's the model like? What's the VM that you guys are using or deploying?
Yeah. So that is exactly right. Everyone that is building on top of, say, would be writing smart contracts, and they can either write vanilla smart contracts if they want to build something like an AMM, or they can make use of special smart contracts that make use of the, say, order matching engine module. And in that case, they would just define a few functions, and then they can create markets and make use of the order matching logic that, say, is built into the chain itself. So the current VM that is supported is Cosmosm. So if you're going to be writing smart contracts, say as well. In the future, we're going to be like, we have the belief that no one should really be limited by the execution environment or the language that they want to be using. If you look at Web 2, no one really cares what language and application is written in. Like if it's written like Python or C++, like no one really cares, right? And we think the same thing is going to be happening in the blockchain space in the future. So longer term, we definitely want to be language agnostic, but for the short term, it's going to be starting off with purely Cosmosm.
So you're not really actually competing with applications, if I understand correctly. Like you're not competing directly with DYDX, for example, or with osmosis. You're more like the infrastructure layer underneath it. But then you also said earlier that you have already over 100 apps that, or like builders that want to deploy on Say. And in fact, yesterday I had a very cool call with the Nitro team. They're using the Solana VM, but they're building on top of you guys, as far as I understood. So talk us through like some of the applications, and maybe like what do you think could be the killer application on Say network?
Yeah. So, I mean, everything that you said over there is exactly correct. We are only building the layer one infrastructure. We're not building any applications on top. Building a DEX and building a layer one are two of the hardest problems in the entire crypto space. We're not trying to solve both of them at the same time. We're only focusing on the infrastructure. Because of that approach, we have had a much easier time building out an ecosystem than a chain that has both the L1 and an application, because we have the credible neutrality piece. So as you mentioned, we do have over 100 teams building on Say ahead of the mainnet launch. Nitro is one of the ones that I'm extremely enthusiastic about. The core idea behind Nitro is it is an optimistic rollup that is built on Say, and it has a Solana VM. So you can think of it as Arbitrum, except it's running the Solana VM and it's writing to Say. And what we actually noticed initially is that there were a lot of Solana teams that were very bullish on coming over to the Cosmos ecosystem. They just didn't want to take their smart contracts and rewrite them. And that's why when Nitro proposed the idea, we became very just optimistic on that approach, because there are a lot of Solana teams that want to come over. And I think that they've had a good number of Solana teams that have already started, like committed to building on Nitro and that are starting to build and port over their smart contracts in the DevNet. In terms of the other teams in the Say ecosystem, I like the stuff that I'm very optimistic about. Like there's two classes of teams that are like building onto, right? There's one class that are teams that have come over from other ecosystems, and there's another class that are purely native teams that are making use of the Say native order matching engine to build very specialized types of applications that you can't build anywhere else. And I'm much more bullish on the second category of teams, because that native order matching engine is a very flexible and generic interface. And some examples of products that I think would be quite interesting to build around that. First of all, would be something like prediction markets. There's a team that announced that they're building prediction markets, and they're not just building the market themselves, they're building the middleware for the market. So other teams can come and build their own prediction markets on top of that. And they can basically have like different geographic teams that are building for different audiences. Like you might have a team that is based in India that is hosting like cricket prediction markets, and you can have a team that is based in Europe that is much more like football oriented or something. So that's one of the projects that I'm excited about. And yeah, I mean, we're going to be announcing more of the ones that are in stealth right now. So we'll be announcing those on our Twitter pretty soon.
Yeah.